We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Nicole Byer, helping you make those rooms flyer. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild! Like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Ooh, fierce! This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Hey, Warmer from Evo! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Visa Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Today, we're going to have a nice two-part conversation with our good friend Justin Perri. He does amazing work over at Shot Quality Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. And while Shot Quality Bets, obviously, they do so much of their work during the season. They've done a great job with their algorithm. They've done a great job with all their tools here in the offseason, and we're going to be chatting with him a little bit about that. What are some of the teams that he's viewing for this upcoming season that might be a little bit overvalued, undervalued? What are some of the teams that, in general, he takes a look at in the offseason to decide, all right, which of these teams is going to have maybe a little bit of an ice edge during the season? We're going to be talking about the coaching moves that we've seen in the offseason. How can we gauge whether or not a team is going to be seeing perhaps a little bit of a tempo shift? Maybe that's a change in coach. Maybe that's having the same coach and bringing guys via the transfer portal. So we've got a lot to talk about, Justin, and we're going to do so here in part number 1 and part number 2 of the podcast. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. Over at EdgeBoost.bet, you're able to make sure that your funds are always accessible. You're able to make sure that 100% of the time that your gambling transactions are going to be approved. And when you go to EdgeBoost.bet, utilize that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's dive in with our good friend Justin Perri. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at his first and last name, Justin Perri. That last name is spelled P-E-R-R-I, the number 8 altogether. And Justin, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Greg, always appreciate coming aboard the show. It's a great time to discuss a little college hoops. Even in the offseason, always itching to get going, no matter how much other stuff's going on in the summer here. All eyes tend to focus towards that November start date.
Oh, it certainly does. And what is big priority right now is just taking a look at what we're going to be getting out of some of these new look teams, because as we know, north of 50 coaching changes happened in the offseason. And how do you evaluate some of these new teams where oftentimes with a coaching change, you also get a complete and utter roster overhaul? Some of these guys will be bringing over guys from the previous stop. Other of these coaches, they bring over just nothing whatsoever. And I think that they are some of the most interesting teams to gauge, and they could be some of the teams that provide the most value.
Oh, yeah. I do think they have some of the most value. And it's a good question right off the bat. Let's get right into it. New coaches require elasticity, is what I'll say. And I think a lot of people tend to not have that. And I think you need to have it in a multitude of ways. The biggest one is that you need to sort of take what you see and run with it maybe a little bit more. New coaches especially are going to work on rotations. You want to sort of know about the type of history they maybe have, especially if they're well tenured. Like, how has it looked as they've switched before? Do they just continue to fill the roles that they've had at other schools? And do they always have the 3-and-D guy and a center who has skills X, Y, and Z? Some coaches really do just build rosters the same way every time. They've had success coaching it. It's what's gotten them this far. You can expect the same style regardless of where they coach. And that is one type. I think with those, you want to be sort of ready to evaluate player performances very, I guess, especially in the first year. We want to expect that coach to maybe go with some of the gut reactions, what he's seeing on the floor. And then the other side of it is maybe a coach who's going to work out some new things, who's going to maybe test a new style to fit in with how things work at a certain school, though that's, I think, less common. A lot of coaches sort of bring their prescribed style in. some coaches do switch styles up just in general. So I think you want to have, especially as they move conferences, move into different levels of the game, right? Moving from a high major or low major to a high major, or mid major to a high major, or maybe even mid major conference to mid major conference. Stylistically, you can be asked to have that elasticity where you are ready to give the coaches a little bit of wiggle room in your modeling, in your projections of what they might do, rather than, I guess, being stuck in and just convinced in what's going to happen. I think a lot of these schools where things are changing, you kind of need to be on your toes and have a little bit of a wider range of expectations. And I guess understandably, and does lead to, is sometimes a little bit of hesitancy, especially at first. And then sort of when you've collected enough data, maybe not being afraid of saying, okay, well, there's this something real, even in a small sample, let me attack it. So I think it's the wait and see and understanding the beast a little bit. And I think a big thing, and I'll probably say it a few times, coaches aren't usually judged on their first year. So it is a very, very difficult thing to try to handicap. Most coaches, they don't bring you in for year one. They bring you in for year 2 to 3 to 4. It's just hard. It's hard. Every program understands that year one is usually not exactly what a head coach wants to deliver, that they don't have everything under their control. They're coming in usually quickly. They don't have the full off-season preparation. So, it's tough. And I think, again, elasticity is the name of the game.
Yep, I think that's so well said. And I do think that there's going to be a lot of intrigue with some of these coaching hires, because I think the one that I'm most confused about is Texas A&M. Not the fact that they brought in Bucky McMillan. I thought that was a good hire, but what we're going to be able to expect out of that team. Because with Bucky McMillan, just played a harebrained style over at Samford where they generate a lot of turnovers. And I think that the three-point shooting is certainly going to be there to say, but they brought in a few extra big men from what we saw over at Samford as well. He's going to have a little bit more size to work with. And out there in the SEC, I just don't know if he's going to be able to run that normal system like he did over at Samford, where they were trying to generate so many turnovers and it was so just harebrained and, for lack of a better term, funky.
Yeah, I mean, they were different, to say the least. And I think it's a different beast when you are like running into the Bucky Ball strategy as a wild card, not supposed to make it that far in March Madness, and you probably didn't scout them that hard. You're like, this team might not win. Maybe, gave them a couple minutes at practice, like this is how they move, whatever. If by some chance they upset and we meet them in the second round here. Well, guess what? That's what happened that year, 2 years ago now. Everyone kind of fell in love with Bucky Ball and Samford and what this team can do. And the 2024 team, I was 7th fastest in the nation, 15th most turnovers forced, some of the best passing in the nation, and they attacked the rim really well while also developing spacing. So they didn't really rebound defensively. They really sold into the transition, and that's kind of the calling card, right? In the actual ranking went down this year, and now the past year in 2025, 325th defensive rebounding rate, forcing the turnovers, moving a little bit slower. I think just the college basketball sped up a little bit this year. And again, taking a lot of threes now, but just moving quick and allowing a lot of speed. And I don't know, I think it's a crossroads for me, Greg. I think the question that you have to ask is he really going to be able to essentially modernize the SEC through this type of, game? And the only way that happens is if essentially the little man can beat the elephant, right? If the mouse can scare off the elephant in the room, which is in this case a monopolistic down low force type of build where, you win in the SEC by playing really good defense and having spectacular shot creators at every point, because it is the pinnacle of college basketball right now, right? So how much more modern can we go? I think Florida this year is a pretty modern version of what we've seen, but this is like, I want to say Indiana Pacers. It might be even more, it's so run and gun that I think it has to modify a little bit to get started. And then in effect, shift through being effective at doing both what the league is looking to try to do in the standard SEC style of play, while also pushing the tempo into a more Bucky Ball style and hoping that scenario actually leads to wins, because it's a copycat league. right? So if Bucky can come in and say, oh, well, I just started moving a little bit faster and we won the SEC, guess what? Everyone's going to continue moving faster and faster and faster. We're seeing it already with Alabama. I mean, threes, it's just modern basketball. We'll see. Positionless shell defenses are going to be a thing with how well the Thunder did. Don't doubt it. And this is just where basketball is going. So I'm interested to see how it translates to college, especially because, there is a talent deficit that I think the NBA enables that level of play a little bit differently. And that's something that people do gripe about. But that's what I think we're going to essentially see here out of Texas A&M. And it's a very, very different type of identity for that program, right? They've not been the modern disruptor in the past. They've very much been the conservative play basketball, the Aggie way, essentially, for a long time.
Yeah, but I'm so glad that you brought up Alabama as well, because I think that leads into a little bit of a bigger point as well. You talked about the modernization of college basketball, all of the three-point shooting. How do you take a look at a team like Alabama, where I absolutely love the fact that they embrace the new day and age, but sometimes I feel like they get a little bit too stubborn with it, and when the threes aren't falling, they really just don't have a backup plan to it. And sometimes I think that that's absolutely to the advantage of Alabama, that they play the style that they do, but sometimes I think it's to their deficit as well, and leads to, for lack of a better term, more volatility in their games.
Oh, yes, correct. More volatility in their games. That is what they want, because they believe that in the volatility they win. That's the whole thing. That's what happens when coach is a math teacher. You do the math, play like a math teacher. And that's the beautiful thing about Alabama. And you're not going to hear too many people really dig into it. But I mean, that's what they're doing. They're just saying the pitfall is that they're going to lose in March, in like the third or fourth round a lot, right? Because they play a really strong regular season format of basketball where, they're basically the Celtics, right? If you're an NBA person. And most people listening are probably not NBA people, but they're Alabama right now. They're this form of Alabama where they shoot so many threes. And then on the other side, maybe almost more importantly, they keep you away from threes. They play the rim and three game really well. So they go to the rim, or they're kicking out for threes if it doesn't work. And then they're denying you at the 3-point line, living with it with good rim denial if you do penetrate. And then on the likelihood that you don't, they are like very happy to give you that mid-range jump shot. Like that is, thank you for the mid-range jump shot. We will, if you hit that, we'll give you a pat on the back and say, good hit, keep taking them. But, we're smiling every time you take it. That is modern. That's very modern basketball now. That, I guess, is the baseline for it. But again, the problem that it does create is that when you miss shots, you lose, which is fine. But I think the proponents of this style are saying, well, we're not going to miss shots that much. Probably 1 in 5, 1 in 6 games go really, really badly. And that's good enough to win the SEC, to get a good seed, to make a run into the second weekend every single year, and likely have one of those cold games before, either in the Final Four or before it. Between the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, the Final Four, one of those 3 games, you just get this super high probability that Alabama or this prototypical modern 3-point shooting shot quality maven team, they're just going to have a bad night. That happens. It's like a pick your poison. And I do think this is the best poison in basketball because, well, maybe the second best poison. And we can get into what I do think is the best one because, like I said, it's a baseline. And what I think it's forcing the game to truly become now, and we can talk about this, Greg, is essentially the anti-Alabama, right? Like if the modern shot quality rim and three bombing team that capitalizes on the math is the popular offensive attack, you need whatever the counter is now the best, most likely team to win it all. And you could argue that Florida did a decent job doing that while also carrying the offensive requirements to match it at the same time, which was, in my opinion, defensive length and heavy front court presence. So fascinating at the high level, honestly.
And I'm so glad that you bring that up as well, because there's another team that comes to mind when you mention the anti-Alabama. And I think that that's a great stopping point for part number 1 of this conversation. And in part 2, we'll talk a little bit more about the defense-oriented teams. We're also going to be talking about some of these teams that he's very intrigued by, Justin is, for this upcoming season that might be running a little bit of a different style and might be able to provide some bang for your buck. So we'll talk about that with Justin on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family Podcast.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Justin Perri. He does such amazing work over at Chuck Quality Bets, and he's one of the best minds that you're going to find in terms of betting and college basketball. Follow him on Twitter /X at Justin Perri. His first and last name spelled Perri, the number 8 altogether. And we talked about the dynamics of Alabama. How about if we talk about a team that is pretty much the anti-Alabama, though, because you were alluding to this a little bit before? That'd be Houston. They are not looking to run it and gun it. They are a team that they shoot it well from three-point range. Like, Houston does take their threes, and they hit their threes. I think that goes a little bit under the radar with them, but they're certainly not a team that's going to be looking to take as many shots as possible. With Alabama, even a bad shot, they're looking to be able to get it up. They're looking to be able to get an offensive rebound, and they're looking for as many looks as possible. Houston is very deliberate in their style, and I think that's such an interesting dynamic. And we get things, and we've seen it in the past, where you do have Alabama versus Houston. Those games are just theater, in my opinion.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's crazy, essentially. The way that Houston plays predicated on just being the best 3 to 4 players in the court, no matter who they play. I think their game does change when that's not the truth, which is fine. And I think it's really smart, honestly. And so they really confuse a lot of the metrics. When we talk about them, when you have me on the show next January, we're sitting here in the bleak winter with our favorite sport back. We're going to be talking about Houston's mid-range percentage being so much higher than everybody else's. And it's going to be because, especially in their non-conference, they're just going to dominate everybody. And they can just back you down and hit the mid-range jumper over non-competitive opponents, and they will dominate you. And even in the Big 12, when they are dominating to first place likely again, which they have done in quietly in short order in terms of getting into this conference less than 5 years ago now, back-to-back titles, they're a force. And so they always have these players that can hit these mid-range shots over lesser opposition. I mean, Sampson is a phenomenal coach. His staff is phenomenal. And yeah, they're anti-Alabama, but they also can hit those threes when they need to. They can move when they need to. They can change their identity when they need to. So they're fascinating. And I do think they'll continue to be a top 3 team, top 5 team, just because of the coaching, just because of the defense, just because they slow the tempo and disrupt the expectations. And that's such a big deal because you can't get your shot off, right? They chase you off the 3 and they force you into the shot that coach doesn't want you taking, and then the shot clock's running out. And that's Houston basketball. And then they go on the other end and they dominate the offensive glass, and they just effectively create more possessions than you're going to get. Even if they miss, they might miss, but they're going to get the ball back, and then they're going to, yes, they don't take a lot of threes, but when they do, they are really deadly. That's a calling card of a team that if they needed to up the 3-point volume, they could, right? Like the second most efficient 3-point shooting team in 2025 per shot quality, the 26th most efficient 3-point shooting team in 2024. So they are definitely aware that you need 3-point shooting, but their identity allows them to pick and choose their spots. And so when they do run into a test, when they might lose, which again, they beat Duke. They won the shot quality on that game. They beat Tennessee. They won by 19 over that Tennessee team, made them look silly, absolutely unexpected result, held them to 15 points in the first half. They couldn't do anything, which is absurd. They're anti-everyone. They're a defensive monster, and they prove the point that if you can lock another team down, it doesn't really matter how much offensive firepower you have. The length, I think, it's really length at the wing. And honestly, yeah, rebounding rates at the forwards is such a big deal at corralling those extra possessions, especially offensive boards, and maneuvering around box outs and understanding how to get off and get rebounds. It's a really important skill that Houston clearly can get their bigs to develop, along with smart 3-point defense at every turn. So always going to be a threat, going to be a fun year. I'm so excited to see how they do.
Oh, I am as well. That is going to be so much fun. And hopefully we do get a Houston versus Alabama matchup, because those are some of the games that I really live for. As Justin Perri, who does such great work over at Chalk Volley Bets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And we've talked about some of the, shall we say, bigger outliers in college basketball. Houston with how great they are on defense and how deliberate they are. Alabama, how quick they are on offense. But is there a team or two that you're just taking a look at in the offseason that you think is going to be an interesting read, and a team that might be able to bring, shall we say, some wrinkles that maybe a lot of teams aren't expecting? Like I was talking about that with Texas A&M. I think that they're a very intriguing team, just because I don't know if we fully know what to expect out of them. But is there another team or two that you're just trying to decipher and you think, man, this team might be doing something a little bit different this year, and I like it?
There's a couple that I have, I guess, some question marks around. Obviously, I'm really scared of Michigan. I will tell you the truth.
Oh, yes.
I think that's an easy one. I do think that there are some interesting builds out there, a couple teams. I wouldn't be shocked to see Florida really be in the top of the conversation again. I think they really understand roster construction. And I think that, teams that are really able to balance what's important on a roster will be able to continue to climb. I expect like a team that looked good with that, like Louisville, is a really smart roster building team. I think they'll bounce back year two for Pat Kelsey in the ACC. He will challenge Duke there. I don't know that, they're going to be 27-8 again. And I don't know that Duke will be 35-4 again, but I think those teams will be fun. And I think they're paired actually this year, maybe. I think the ACC is moving to an interesting pairing. So Duke and Louisville are going to be some fun basketball this season. And I think all eyes still need to be on UConn. I'm a St. John's guy, but UConn is arguably still the smartest program in basketball. They elevate their talent better than anybody else. It's just the truth. And the sets they run and how in-depth their offense is just at a different level. And it's like, imagine having an extra player on the court. It's like, it's that difficult. Not that, maybe a little less. But you get to that point where the motion, the screens, how open some of these players are getting, you're just like, where did that extra screener come from? That's what Dan Hurley is sort of able to do. So in down year, I don't know. I don't think you're going to get 2 down years out of Dan Hurley. That's a fool's errand believing in that potential. So we'll see how that goes. I think there's a couple other schools, a little bit down low that are, continuing to reload. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how Xavier looks, and, Texas as well, with that little shift moving. That's a fun little bump to bump there. And a lot of people, 2 Patinos in the Big East now are going to be very interesting. I do think Xavier is a strong program that should be able to continue to attract strong talent. So might not be the best first year, but I do expect some good longevity for the program there. And it wouldn't surprise me to see Richard hang out at least 2 to 3 years until Rick's ready to pass the New York City crown to his son, which is truly my expectation. I think he wants to do that. So we'll see how it goes.
I think that would be absolutely incredible, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that about UConn as well, because Dan Hurley, no confidence in himself in terms of being the best coach in all of college basketball, so we know that he believes that they're going to be able to bounce back. You believe so. I do think so as well, but I am a man that never needs a bounce back because he's always on top. That'd be you, Justin. You do such an incredible job looking at this great game of college basketball and so much more. I know that you're doing some baseball work. I know that you do just a little bit of everything on the basketball front. We've got one NBA Finals game remaining, so let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Game 7, baby. We'll be live streaming that for Sunday night. That'll be fun. And then, we don't finish BetCast, which is our live betting show, one of a kind. Tune in, watch us bet on the games that are actually happening and using the shot quality proprietary software. But we're doing that all summer. We'll be doing it for WNBA. We do not really have any, determinations. If we have the software for it and we can bet on it and it works, we will do it. I started a nice 4-1 on our first WNBA episode this past week. So hopefully continues to be fruitful. The data continues to be powerful. Always fun to see it be applied to new leagues and work. And I mean, that's just been the truth of everything we've done with shot quality. Is the principles that it preaches are applicable. Trusting the process, trusting what you see with your eyes, and not necessarily, oh, well, the result is that this person lost. Well, did they take the better shots? Because long-term, better shots win. Sometimes better shots lose, but more times than not, bet on the better shot. You should put that on a t-shirt somewhere and sell it. But yeah, you can find everything I'm doing over on my Twitter at JustinPerri8. It's going to be a good summer. Got some baseball stuff going on as well. Been developing out some proprietary metrics using some advanced data and having a good time with it. So always appreciate the ability to give myself a shout here, Greg, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Absolutely. Justin, just one of the best minds that you're going to find in any space, basketball, betting, whether that be a little bit in baseball as well. I know that he's going to be doing some work during the summer as well. And every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So big thanks to Justin for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And if you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. Then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. A big thanks once again to Justin for joining me here on this podcast. And I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Nicole Byer, helping you make those rooms flyer. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild! Like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Ooh, fierce! This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.